Men who instinctively take personal responsibility for themselves and their families eventually realize that being atomized, rootless cosmopolitans inhibits their ability to exercise their willpower. Male agency naturally leads into the creation of a patriarchy. Raise your sons to be strong, masculine and dominant. Raise your daughters to be soft, feminine and submissive. The bad behavior that we see from women today is simply a rebellion against men's failure to benevolently dominate. The failure of Western society is a failure to maintain the patriarchy.
Good evening, good morning, and good day, mate. It's Patriarch Hour, number 9. I'm joined once more by Noah Revoy. How are you, Noah?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. Now, tonight we have the very important topic. We're gonna wade into the murky swamp of the mind of the gamma male. And this is, as anyone who watched our recent episode on the sociosexual hierarchy will know, that this is one of the 6 main archetypes. There's probably a few more you could throw in the mix, but one of the main 6 anyway. And the gamma male is one of the more interesting, one of the more dangerous, and one of the more difficult to recognize and deal with of the men in the sociosexual hierarchy, largely because of their great capacity for deception. So tonight we're going to go on a bit of a tour of the characteristics of the gamma male, and we're also going to explore some examples of them through history, particularly through literature. And I'd like to talk about the different way that they've been portrayed previously in the Western canon of literature to how they're being portrayed today. But maybe you can share some thoughts broadly with us before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, Noah.
Yeah, I think when we are having this discussion, we have to understand that we do have a certain level of empathy for people that are gammas. Generally, these are very much underfathered men. These are men whose father didn't set a good example. The father was a gamma, or he was completely absent, or perhaps he was an overbearing alpha, an R-type destructive alpha as well, and they're somehow reacting to that as well. That's part of it. So we're not sitting here saying, if you display gamma tendencies, go hang yourself. That's not what we're saying. Definitely. We're trying to help you, and we're trying to help the gammas to improve, and we're trying to help people who have to deal with them to facilitate their improvement. And the best way to help a gamma is to not tolerate his gamma tendencies. Don't tolerate his behavior, his bad behavior. Think like a father. If you have a child that's behaving poorly, indulging the child makes it worse. Explaining and caring and correcting the child makes it better over time. And so that's what responsible men in society, that's their job, is to help the to help the gammas to not be gammas anymore.
Absolutely.
And if we don't do that, they're gonna be a gamma to the wrong person, and they are going to feel serious consequences. Women won't tolerate them. They're going to feel consequences on that end, and there are men who will not tolerate gammas, and they won't have any patience with them. They'll deal with them the hard way. It's our job to help them avoid that kind of pain and suffering, and that's why we're having this conversation today.
Absolutely. And there is some level of mobility within the sociosexual hierarchy. Depending on the person, depending on their willingness to work and develop themselves, a gamma can become a delta, with the right amount of honesty. And the main ingredient that's missing in the gamma behavioral pattern, and this is the thing to keep in mind as well, this is not a genetic subgroup of humans. These are just men who have embodied a particular range of behaviors that are common enough that a taxonomy has been applied to put them into a category. And this particular taxonomy has been coined by Vox Day. I think it's a really helpful paradigm through which to view men in groups. And the gamma male is just a guy behaving in a certain set of ways, and we can generally point, as you have already, Noah, to some root causes. And there's a lot. I think there's a bit of an epidemic of gamma males in our society at the moment because there's a massive lack of patriarchy. There's a massive lack of responsible, benevolent male dictatorship in the family structure. Boys are being raised by single mums. The state and the culture are incentivizing women to do away with men in the way that they raise children, and the laws are tilted towards female. All of these problems that we talk about a lot, and MGTOWs. Although we condemn the choice that MGTOW are making as their proposed solution, they correctly recognize the problems in the world, and these are the same problems that lead to the creation of gamma males. And so if you can already begin to be honest about that and begin to examine your own behavior, you can hopefully find out tonight if you fit the bill of a gamma, and if you're brave enough, courageous enough, honest enough to stick around, if that's you. We can offer some advice on how to improve that, and the people around you will receive advice from us today about how to deal with you to help you get over yourself and become a really valued and a really stable and positive contributing member of the hierarchy. And that's our aim here.
Yeah, and it's absolutely, I believe that being a gamma is learned behavior. I think it's people who would have been under proper fathering, they would have ended up maybe as a delta, maybe even as a bravo, and they lacked the correct incentives to learn the right kind of behavior. Anything that you've learned, you can unlearn. It's under your control. You can do it. It's going to be hard, perhaps. So if you learn to hunch over all the time and have bad posture, it's hard to learn to stand straight again. But the benefits are massive. I don't think gammas are generally very happy people. I think they're generally quite unhappy because they recognize they have unfulfilled potential, and that's extremely frustrating for them. And you'll talk to gammas who often think the whole world is against them. This is not a happy way to live.
No.
And if you listen to the message we have today, your level of happiness can be increased dramatically by applying this advice.
Yep. Well said. So what I've done is compile a list of the characteristics as pointed out by Vox Day in his video at Voxiversity, and we can discuss these in a little bit more depth. But the one that I put first on the list, and I can't remember if this was his chronological first, but to me it is probably the most important to start with, and it's the most tragic of all of them. But the characteristic is that gammas are the group of men in the sociosexual hierarchy who have the most undeveloped potential. They have a lot of natural talent. They're very highly intelligent young men or older men, generally, but they're naturally intelligent, but their potential hasn't been properly developed. And again, this speaks to a lack of the proper cultivation of manhood and the proper cultivation of virtuous character that comes from being raised, hopefully, by a really good father with a great mother as well.
And it's interesting because we might look at this and say, well, that's a them problem, But when you have a large portion of your population, of your very potentially most productive men, making decisions which make them very unproductive, it affects all of us. We don't live in a vacuum. And historically, there were good reasons to suppress gamma behavior because of how it affected society. And we're not doing that today. In fact, we've often got to a point where we have gammas in alpha positions destroying nations because they have risen way beyond where they're capable of managing, and instead of being highly productive in an area that suits them, they're pushed up into areas that are causing the destruction of Western civilization. And it's up to us men to suppress that behavior. And it starts by talking about it and letting people know what it is.
Now, I would, although we won't go too far down this particular rabbit hole tonight for obvious reasons, time constraints being one of them, I would argue that the gamma male can only rise to the position that naturally belongs to an alpha through nepotism. It's through being surrounded by other gammas who recognize that particular pattern of traits and, find familiarity in it and want to give avenues for it. And we end up seeing whole industries that are run essentially by gammas. And they
there is one other way.
Yeah.
There is one other way.
Do tell.
A lot of women are not, they're easily conned by a gamma into thinking he's an alpha. And then they elect people like Justin Trudeau in Canada, and he was pretty much elected by women. And the reason being is that they're not as good as men at determining a very well put together gamma. He can fake being an alpha for a while. Eventually, and I think everybody's kind of come to that realization now, eventually it comes out what they are, but they can fake it long enough to get power, especially if they have strong backing from people that want an easily controlled person in there. When you rise to a level that you're not suited for, it makes you weak comparatively for the job you have, and therefore easy to manipulate and control. And those that want manipulatable, controllable politicians will sometimes promote those kind of guys up to the top too. So it within a male hierarchy, it's got to be nepotism for them to get up there.
Yeah.
But within a democracy, which is, women make up the majority of voters. So within a democracy, it is more, it is often due to women being conned fairly easily by, relatively good looking men with potential, and forgetting that that's not enough to be in charge.
It kind of makes you wonder if this wasn't part of the intention of universal suffrage in the first place. But again, a rabbit hole we don't need to go too far down tonight. So going beyond their undeveloped potential, gammas tend to be low status but not total social outcasts. And we've already spoken about some of the ones who con their way into alpha positions, but that's not the majority of them. The everyday average gamma that you meet is struggling to receive the respect that he feels he deserves and doesn't know why he's not getting it. And so they have a low status, but they're socially adept and intelligent enough to not be complete outcasts like the Omega that we talked about briefly last time. Now, gammas tend to be unattractive to women. And this is, I think, this is on an instinctive, almost pheromonal sexual level. And this happens when a gamma male is in the presence of a woman. She is not, generally speaking, obviously there are exceptions, but she's not going to be turned on by him in the way that she is by an alpha, by a genuine alpha. And it makes me wonder about guys like Justin Trudeau, who are in these successful alpha roles. If an everyday woman was to meet him in person, I imagine she would probably find him incredibly creepy and weird and feminine and not sexually attractive. But propped up by the media machine and presented in a controlled manner, a guy like Trudeau can seem more attractive to a woman on the screen and on the social media than he would be in real life. And so that smell of a gamma is something that women really have a radar for generally, even if they can be conned.
Yeah, that deceptiveness of the gammas is why a few of them, not many of them, but a few of them, when backed properly, and like you said, it was an entire coordinated media effort to get him into power. That's why those type of there is that capacity to trick in the short term, but it is something that people figure out very quickly. Face to face, it'll. We will see this often with politicians. I've seen this many times. Someone's coming up all excited to meet them. They meet them and you see them walking away like, what?
Yeah.
I see this with, I don't know if he's a gamma or not, but you'll see this with Joe Biden. People come up to meet him and then he acts all weird to them and them kind of slowly inching away back towards the door. So it is something that is instinctual. Now, I've talked to many, many women, hundreds of women, and they may have been, let's say, romantically interested in a gamma guy, but then realizing, hey, he's got something. It's usually women with very broken mandar. They'll be interested in a guy, and he is clearly a gamma, but their mandar is so badly broken, and all of their friends say, I don't know what's wrong with him, but he's hiding something.
Yeah.
What it is women with functioning radar, with functioning emotional intelligence for this, they recognize that something is being hidden. There is a hidden secret that person is not talking about. They're the hidden king. They're the secret king. Sorry, they're the they think that they are something that they aren't, and so they're acting in a deceptive manner. And often the women can't pinpoint what the problem is. They just get this icky feeling, like this individual is trying to trick them. There's something wrong there. And, if you're a woman and your friends are saying that about the guy you're interested in, listen to them.
Mm,
There might be
absolutely.
something to it.
I'd like to actually, it just reminded me what you're talking about there. I want to read out a brief blog from Vox Day's Vox Populi blog. I'm sorry, Vox Day is very relevant to this topic because he's the guy who's coined these terms. So people often talk to him about it. But a woman wrote to him, and this is the email that she wrote to him, and he posted it on his blog. Repellent to women. That phrase just keeps coming back to me, as it perfectly describes the reaction of nearly everyone at my workplace to the recent hiring of a gamma. We work in a small office with around 20 people, only 3 of whom are men. I would assess 2 of them as deltas, hard-working, polite, able to give and take a joke without causing or taking offence. The girls all love them in a brotherly sense, have little inside jokes with them, etc. However, the new guy is an entirely different story. He perceives himself to be charming, witty, and attractive, tries to engage all of us with witty bon mots and other conversational gambits. Scuttlebutt around the lunch table yesterday consisted of, he's not going to last long, well, I wish he would just hurry up and quit then, I don't like him, I don't appreciate his sense of humour, as well as comments about what a girl's blouse he was for nearly bursting into tears when one of the girls complained to the boss, he was eavesdropping, about how she found his habit of asking for too much personal information unsettling. He stormed out and then had to be talked into returning to work. They should have just let him leave. I also heard through the grapevine that the reason his nose looks like that is that he's been punched in the face so many times over the years that it has been broken more than once. Every afternoon I find myself muttering, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, under my breath as his talking escalates towards the end of the day. I'm counting down the days until the petty sabotage begins. It's going to be awful. So, there's a woman's first-hand experience of a gamma arriving in the workplace that's otherwise a female-dominated organization and has a couple of delta males who fit in and work hard and do their job. But the gamma brings in disruption largely because of his delusion of his delusions of grandeur. His self-delusions in those ways, and the women, when they're exposed to it directly and on that intimate a basis where they have to share an office space with this guy, a bit different to watching Trudeau on the screen, where you can be convinced he's an alpha potentially, though he's clearly not once you look close enough. But yeah, in real life, gammas are very unattractive to women.
Yeah, recently a woman messaged me and said that she thinks that a reason why a lot of women want to enter the workplace, especially very male-dominated areas, is because they want to be around men again. They're looking for high-quality men. And if you are an employer and you hire a gamma in, this is like throwing a grenade into your office.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly what's going to happen, but someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And it's not enough just to fire them, because that can ruin the chemistry that you have. A team with good chemistry is highly productive, and you ruin that, you can really hurt the productivity of your company. If you have a small company, that can be enough to sink it. I have seen gammas sink companies. I have seen owners with gamma tendencies sink their own company, basically to spite themselves. It was ridiculous, and so you've got to be really careful about that when you're responsible for people.
Yeah, and it's not to say that gammas are the only ones who can be destructive, or the only toxic element, because having an organization with 2 alphas who are too close to each other, that can cause real problems too. They will butt up against each other, and they may tear at least parts of the organization apart. So being aware of these traits is the key, and understanding these behavioral patterns in men so that you can build your organization or your club or your social circle appropriately and manage these behaviors. Now, gammas have an above average intelligence. This is also why they have such undeveloped potential. They genuinely are smart boys. Smart. They know a lot about the things they're obsessed with.
Big brain.
And they're intelligent, and they can adapt, and they will, if unchecked and if not contained and controlled and diverted into positive activities, that intelligence can be certainly used malevolently. Now, they also have a tendency towards a lack of physical health. They're either overweight, usually, or they're skinny and hunched. They're not prime examples of physical men generally at posture check. Um,
Better
so
stand up straight.
and again, there are always exceptions. There are gamma males who can who will work very hard to develop their physique, but you know, it's just a generalization. It's just the general trend is towards lack of physical health, and the way they're portrayed generally too in fiction, and the media and pop culture is supportive of this idea of their lack of physical health too. And
In fact,
in some ways
in
it's almost
coaching
a
men who are
sorry.
gammas, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say
Oh,
it seems to also be in some ways a protest against the alpha. And we see this a lot in the culture of the gamma is that the jock, the sporty guy, the alpha male is the big meaty dumb idiot, and we're the intelligent nerds, we gammas, and so we don't need to invest in our physicality. That's what the jocks do. We're far more interesting and creative and all of these other qualities. So gammas can tend to see it as an either or situation, mutually exclusive. You're either smart and a brainy kind of person, or you're a physical person. And the ideal is to be both.
well, I've actually noticed when coaching men with gamma tendencies and helping them to overcome that, a lot of times men who come to me who on paper should be married already. I mean, they have everything they need. They're tall, they're reasonably good looking, and they're they have a job that they make decent money, but they can't find a woman. And I will help them to eliminate their gamma tendencies so that women can see that potential they have as actually being realized. It almost always corresponds to an improvement in physical fitness.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if the lifting weights and getting fit or the physical changes or the psychological changes come first. I think it's a little of each, and you have to do both.
Yeah.
If you want to change who you are, changing how you look is important. Our ancestors knew this, and when there was a major change in life, they would do something different. They would shave their head, or they would shave their beard, or they would grow a beard, or they would, for example, they might have a certain hairstyle that is synonymous with their group or the institute that they joined, the tonsure for the monks, for example. So changing our appearance to emulate a psychology that we want to emulate. The Bravos are always trying to emulate the Alpha. They want to support him, but they also want to be more like him in a kind of way you look up to a big brother. The Gamma resents that. Well, when the Gamma can overcome that resentment and say, the Alpha's probably got it right here. I probably should be stronger and fitter and healthier, and maybe I should support the hierarchy, because they're not just anti-alpha, they're anti-hierarchy.
Yes.
The sigmas, because I've had a few gammas say they're sigmas. The sigmas, they understand the hierarchy and they support it. They just don't want to be in it. The gammas, they want to be in it, but then they don't want to support it.
Yeah.
They want to tear it down, and so it's pretty much opposite that way. And it's that changes, those physical changes really help with the psychological change as well.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that distaste or that hatred for the hierarchy that seems to be the psychological trait of the gamma is probably the main reason why we liken the gamma mind to a female mind. It's not an insult to women. Women are supposed to be the way they are, and we've talked about this before, that women, when they're existing within the protection of a patriarchy, which is the male hierarchy, women have a tendency to create peace and equality, and it's through a little bit of face saving, and it's through a little bit of social dishonesty for the greater good of peace within the castle. Peace around the hearth. It's that don't let your girlfriend, don't tell your girlfriend she's fat. Make her feel good so that you can all coexist happily, and it doesn't degenerate into a massive female war around the hearth. This tendency towards equality that women have is a natural trait of the female mind, but it belongs in the female mind, and it belongs within the protection of the patriarchy, which rejects equality and is all about hierarchy and competition and empirical meritocracy. So when you have men in your midst in the patriarchy who are trying to tear down the hierarchy for that lie of equality, that's when you get real problems. Why are these men acting like women?
If women fed their babies based on merit, they'd be terrible mothers, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
They're expected to treat a bunch of very disequal children as equally as possible.
Yes.
You know, as fair. Like, women are very concerned with what's fair, so are small children, whereas adult men are more concerned with what is right, and that's because we have different jobs. The women with the under single digit age children, with the women, need that fairness because they're fragile.
Yes.
They need the extra support. And the older children, you know, like getting into puberty and past puberty, they need the meritocracy of the father. They need that structure, that organization. They need to get ready to compete in the outside world. And so it's different purposes. We have different purposes in it. When you get someone who is, you know, you get a woman who acts very much like a man, can make her a terrible mother. It can. And not, some women are still okay. They learn the motherly skills as well. But you have a man behaving like a woman, again, that's not going to fit into his role. We don't fit our role properly. We're not able to use our potential.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And I think that ties in well to our next point in the traits of the Gamma, which is that they are dishonest with themselves and others. And so, as you say, we men are, when we're behaving properly, we're interested in what's right and what's true. Gammas tend to be more about what's fair. And, you know, I mean, I just keep reminding people when they complain about the unfairness of the world, my tendency these days is to say, yeah, so what? It's not fair. It's never been fair. It's never going to be fair. You've got to fight to get what you can out of life. You've got to be a winner, and there will be losers necessarily. But the Gamma will reject this idea and, you know, either strive for equality or strive to scramble up that hierarchy and be the secret king, which is the analogy that gets used a lot to describe Gammas. You know, that they if only the world were fair, then I would be recognized for my talent and my brilliance and my amazing leadership qualities that nobody seems to want to follow. But that's the dishonest, self-deceiving mind of the Gamma.
Well, you can imagine a very intelligent 5-year-old child with a single mother who is coddling him and telling him, "Oh, you're my prince. You're so amazing. You're wonderful. You're the most brilliant boy there is," and building up his ego massively. And of course, now he's got no father to help him correct that as he gets older. It's fine to tell your kids, "Hey, you're very intelligent in all of this," but you do have to give them a real, if it's true. If it's not true, it's harmful to tell them that. If they're average, let them know they're average and what they're going to have to do to be successful as an average person. But you have these basically overly coddled children that never grow up, and you can sort of understand what a Gamma is like.
Yes.
I think this is why part of the reason women aren't attracted to them is they are very childish, and women aren't attracted to children. They want, you know, men like neonateny, women like maturity. Women crave maturity in men.
Yep, absolutely. We'll take a quick step away from the Gammas for a moment because we've had a predictable super chat from Port Film Co-op who is asking this of everyone that he can get his hands on, and he wants to know, and it's worth $5 to us. Hey Noah, what is your favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie?
I don't really watch very many movies. I probably, as a kid, watched most of the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, but it's not exactly high cinema.
Yeah, I couldn't answer it. I couldn't answer this one either.
No, I do like, I can't remember the name of it, but it's one where I think he's working on some lady's farm and he's helping her out and he really doesn't want to fight, and then that's pretty much every movie. He doesn't want to fight, then they make him fight.
They pushed him too far.
Yeah, it's that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a funny question. It's interesting. I'm curious why you asked that question.
Yeah, I am too. But he's also added in a non super chat, but I'll read it out because he's a big supporter of ours. He writes, Van Damme in most of his films is pure unfiltered alpha archetype. He's an important symbol. His stories are simple moral ones represented by balletic violence that should be seen as a form of dance. I think that's cool. I like that.
I do agree with the simple cinema is often has a much better set of morals than the overly complex cinema. An example of that is the Conan stories and the Conan movies. The stories the book being much better than the actual movies. There is a very clear, in the stories, the wizards are usually kind of gammas. They're using their words to trick and deceive and can create and control things. And Conan comes in and goes, "No, I'm going to hit you with a sword until you stop." And it's basically he's the brute alpha of his group, and it's interesting to see that interplay in the stories, and to see, since the stories cover a time period, to see how he handles it when he's older compared to when he's younger.
And one thing that I think is important to note about Van Damme, as well as Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and a lot of these 80s action icons, they were in some ways the last generation of real alpha men portrayed in Hollywood in alpha roles, kicking butt. And it was at the time, and we're jumping ahead a little bit here because we're going to get to this in detail. But as you can see, my row of modern gammas here, this was at the time that they were also putting Marty McFly forward as the new kind of hero. And it was that shift in the culture away from masculinity that was, really thrust on our generation through the heroes that we were given, that in a way, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, all these guys were the last, the last stand against that. And they kind of lost, now you look at the alpha males of the current generation. It's what's his name? Channing Tatum or whatever his bloody name is. Like, they're all these pretty, muscly, pretty boys, and they're not alphas at all, and they don't portray any of the character or the heroism that we would expect from an alpha. They just have the look.
Well, the alpha males of modern cinema are women. That's what they put there in place of alpha males. They replaced them with gammas. Yeah. They replaced them with gammas, and finally they replaced them with women.
Yeah.
Now, I think people are starting to catch on, and you've seen a drop in female-led, superhero movie returns on the box office, and TV shows aren't being watched. People, it's just not popular. People don't want to see women doing a poor imitation of a man. And I think if someone starts making really masculine, return to real masculine themes again in movies, I think it'd be very popular. And anytime someone heard recently that, Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to be in a movie, people immediately got interested until they saw that, he's just a bit player and it's actually a woman-centric movie. And then, no, I don't think I'll go see it in the theater.
Yeah.
So I think if you really came back with that, men especially would be attracted to it, but women like that too. Women want strong men around to protect them.
Yeah,
strong men.
I haven't yet seen the latest Terminator film, and they've all just been progressively down. They've all just been downhill. After T2, which was just knocked it out of the park, just a fantastic movie, and then T3 was rubbish, and then it's just gotten weirder and more, reaching into the idiot sphere for writing, but I, one thing that I liked about Sarah Connor. And I think we might have talked about this before. I know I've talked about it on my show, if not with you, Noah. But Sarah Connor was a great character because in the first Terminator film, she was a damsel in distress. She was a waitress, just an ordinary young woman who got caught up in a terribly violent, terrifying situation, saved by an alpha, impregnated by an alpha shortly before he dies, and then the second film, we leap forward and we see that the trauma of that experience and the knowledge that she has of this horrible future that's coming, that she really wants to stop but is powerless to, has made her insane and also made her incredibly masculine. And Linda Hamilton really transformed herself physically, and the character she portrayed was very strong and masculine, but when it came down to those moments where she had to perform the cold-hearted violence to get the job done and stop Judgment Day from coming, she turned to mush. She melted and looked at this, looked at Danny Dyson, the child of the guy who was about to launch the computer program that was going to become Skynet. She looks at this little boy over his wounded father, and she can call the whole thing off if she kills his dad, but she cannot drop her maternal instinct in this moment. And it was just a beautiful piece of character writing to show that, the hard woman is really still a woman underneath, and that duality that they created in her was part of her insanity. And so I'm sure that what they've done with her since... Sorry, go on.
And the terrible cost that women pay when they try to be men. There are instances where women have to act more masculine for their own survival, but they pay a terrible cost. It's unhappiness, physical degeneration,
misery,
because it messes with their hormones. It's misery.
Yeah. And they really James Cameron really captured that in the writing and the directing, and Linda Hamilton as an actress really captured that. But in the most recent one, the second most recent one, what was it, Genesis? I saw that. It was sort of like, I probably would have preferred to scoop my eyeballs out with spoons than watch it again. But they had that English actress who played Khaleesi in Game of Thrones come in to play her, and she didn't have anything like the physique that Linda Hamilton had. She just looked, squishy and female. And it's pleasant, but it's totally inappropriate for the role. And yet she was able to pull this 100-kilo muscle man up off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, pull him up without dislocating her shoulders, and then in the next shot she's just like nothing happened at all. So the level of just ludicrous. I mean, we're going on a tangent here, but this is the product of the rejection of alphadom, the rejection of masculinity, and the rejection of genuine appreciation of the roles that men and women play has gradually been drained out of Hollywood and all television and movie portrayals of men and women, to the point where we're living in a total clown world in the way that they portray all of us. So back to the traits of the Gamma. They are highly romantic. They really tend to make extreme gestures of romance to win the attention of the women that they're pursuing, and it comes from a belief that the intensity of their feeling and their high effort is related to how much the woman will be attracted to them. So they think that if they try hard enough and profess their love poetically enough and beautifully enough, that it will make women more attracted to them. And sometimes it does for a little while, because it's like a spell, it's like a magic spell, but it cannot replace the chemistry, the biological impulse that women naturally feel towards the alpha male. And that's an animal instinct that cannot be circumvented.
When they don't have the honesty of they don't have the masculinity of the alpha. They don't have the honesty of the Bravo. Yeah. They don't have what women need, because not all women want the alpha either. There are a lot of women
or the work ethic and the reliability of the Delta.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. In the hierarchy, all the men get a partner. It's the men who are outside the hierarchy that don't get a partner. And really, he's a worm in the apple. The Gamma is a worm in the apple. He's in the hierarchy, but not really. He's not part of it. He's just in it. Yeah.
Yeah, Port Film Co-op's adding on the Terminator saga. He says Sarah Connor's story is about motherhood fundamentally, but after the first two films, which are essentially the same film, the films no longer followed the Mary Christ story and the Immaculate Conception. And that's true. In the third one, it was, Sarah Connor was just kind of like a byline. She was just like, oh yeah, and she died of cancer. She's gone. And Claire Danes was in it for some reason. I never understood that choice. But then in Genesis, it's literally a story about her son coming back, and now he's the bad guy, and now we have to kill him. So she literally kills the son who she saved. Like, it's that perfect satanic inversion of take her entire motherly mission and role and now make her kill her own baby. I really astonished my mum and my wife, who I watched the film with quite recently, when we got halfway through the film, and I slammed my hand down on the coffee table and I was like, it's a pro-abortion film. And they couldn't believe it, but I stand by it. It's a pro-abortion film. She killed her own son.
Yeah, and historically, abortion wasn't always carried out before the child was born. There's a lot of young children murdered by their mothers historically.
Yeah.
Probably there's estimates that more women were murdered by their mothers, more people were murdered by their mothers than were murdered in war.
Wow.
So it was actually a pretty high rate. You know, basically the rate of abortion we see today isn't historically that odd. It's the high level of acceptance for it that's odd, because it was always considered very unacceptable, and especially for men, they really, there was always laws against it historically.
Yep, rightly so. All right, so the gamma also tends to be passive aggressive and conflict avoidant, and they, you know, in regards to their romantic gestures and their behavior around women, is they, even though they have what we've been describing as a sort of feminine mindset, they really don't understand women. They don't understand what turns women on and what makes women happy. And it's because they're lacking those qualities that we listed before that you find in the alpha, the bravo, and the gamma typically. The alpha, the bravo, and the delta of honesty, masculinity, genuine masculinity, and reliability and work ethic. Now, some ways that you can recognize a gamma, and we've used this knowledge to weed out the odd gamma who shows up in the comments or on Twitter and whatnot. They write walls of text. They can't constrain their comments to one. They have to basically drop an essay on you. And I get this a lot in the YouTube comments. I get these comments that are just walls of text, and I don't read them. And I'll tell you that now. If you're watching and you're planning to write an essay in the comments, I'm not going to read it at all. And I may even just block you completely from being able to make comments in the future. It's a really antisocial behavior when the comments are designed to be a comment, not an essay. If you want to write an essay, start a blog. If you want to write an essay, or if you've got a lot to say on these topics, start your own YouTube channel. You're totally welcome to do that, but this is our party, and we'll boot out the gammas if we want to. But yeah, it's these uninvited presumptions that people care about the depths to which they've thought things through. That's one of the delusions of the gamma. So watch out for those walls
and if you read those walls of text, if you ever do read those walls of text, you will notice that it's 50% them trying to convince themselves and 50% them trying to convince us. So they're often they do lie to themselves, but they kind of also, because they're not stupid, they kind of know that they're lying to themselves deep down inside. And so they have to work really hard to convince themselves of the things that they say. And a lot of times, it's that you will see also in those walls of text, it's all about undermining the individual that's making an argument that they don't like, rather than addressing the argument directly. There'll be a lot of knock salts. There'll be the gossip, shaming, slander, all that kind of moralizing. And that's what you'll see in those text comments. So it's basically not worth reading them.
Yeah, and what I've found, because I've learned the hard way over the years since I've been a public commentator in the way that I am, I've learned the hard way that often that initial wall of text will actually be quite polite, seem congenial. It will be drawing you in, and then as soon as you engage, then the nastiness starts to come out, and there'll be a lot of posturing. They will almost always, and a lot of them jump straight to it. If they've already decided they don't like you, and I get this one all the time in much more concise comments, they assume their own superiority to you, and they assume their ability to judge you. That somehow their condemnation or the secrets that they think they know about you, they often hint, I'm going to expose you, and things like that. Because they're trying to, it's that psychologizing aspect of the GRSSM, GSRRM. The psychologizing is they're trying to make you freak out by implying that they know whatever dirty, dark secrets you've got in your closet. So they make allusions to stuff that they don't know about, that doesn't actually exist. It's all in their own head. But they think they can read your mind. They think they can discern your motivations. And it becomes their method of attack. And
well, if
usually,
you're a gamma and you're lying all the time, you've got lots of things to hide, and you assume other people do as well. If you're an alpha, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Even if you're a loyal Bravo or a hardworking Delta, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Exposing you is good. And if you're really in a hierarchy, your others in the hierarchy will have your back. So you don't worry about that.
yeah.
You don't worry about what random weirdo strangers think about you.
So they
But the
project
gamma
their
does.
own insecurity and believe that they can
Exactly.
use the insecurity that they feel, they can use that as a weapon against other men. So
Yeah.
imagine a pack of gammas together, and they do swarm, like they swarm on the internet.
Mhm.
You find these YouTube channels and these groups online who really are just like, these swarming piles of gammas who are just they're sort of riling each other up to run into battle and start performing their tactics on everyone, and it's quite. Like we can get the smell of it very, very quickly because we know what we're looking for. But look for the posturing and look for the assumptions of superiority. Look for the moral judgment that they cast on individuals, without any provocation, without any evidence, all of these sorts of things. And then the most important and the clear final sign of the gamma that absolutely confirms it, because it basically happens every time, is if you've been foolish enough to be drawn into a debate with a gamma, no matter what happens, no matter how much you're able to expose their illogic, their inconsistency, their hypocrisy, their total lack of information or education on the topic, does not matter what happens, they will declare victory, and they'll go and tell all their friends how they beat you down. They cannot accept defeat. And this is why a lot of them end up with broken noses in real life. And even then, they'll be the guys who say, well, you should have seen the other guy. Knowing full well they got their ass handed to them. They will lie.
Yeah, his hand was all bruised.
My face bruised the shit out of his hand. So they're the traits to look out for. Now, I want to jump back in time a little and give some examples from literature it was all from literature on the gamma male, and point out that the way gammas were always portrayed in the Western canon, when the Western canon of literature was written by Westerners, was written by Englishmen like William Shakespeare and Tolkien, and Frenchmen like Alexandre Dumas. When these people were the writers of what we now consider to be the Western canon, the gamma was always the villain, and it's not to say that every villain was a gamma. There were certainly alpha gammas and other types, but gammas were never portrayed in a positive light or in a heroic light. So the examples you can see there on the screen, in the center we have Mondego from The Count of Monte Cristo, played brilliantly by Guy Pearce in the film version, which is very different from the book version. But he lied and betrayed his best friend in order to steal the woman of his the love of his life from him, and steal his entire life from him. And it's one of the most satisfying tales of righteous vengeance in all of Western literature. But Mondego was a gamma male who used deceit, used his intelligence and his charm to set himself into a to falsely climb the hierarchy into alpha position, and it all fell apart for him in the end, because the true alpha of the tale was the man who became the Count of Monte Cristo, and got his justice. Now on the right there, we see Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, the second book, and he is whispering lies and deceit into the ears of the King of Rohan, and he's set this kingdom into complete chaos and disarray by wheedling his way into a position of influence, and they were often
and a big part of what he did was undermine the military hierarchy
yes.
that was under the king, that protected the king and isolated the king from his hierarchy. And
Exactly.
any alpha that tolerates gammas near him is going to find that happens. It will drive a wedge between him and the bravos, and it will destroy their hierarchy.
That's, yep, excellent point. And what you see in the Two Towers is that the riders of Rohan despise this worm tongue, and they just want to get in touch with their king. But he's, as you can see here, he's become decrepit and lost because of the dark magic influence of this lying worm tongue. But yeah, it's gammas perform the function of being a wedge in the hierarchy. They divide and conquer through their malevolent influence in that way. And in a very similar example, we see Iago from Shakespeare's Othello, and he's, you know, the sort of best friend and confidant of the titular hero Othello, and he, similarly to both of these others that we have portrayed here, he uses lies and a very clever web of deceit to destroy Othello and all of his interests. It's a very tragic tale, but I want to read one of the brief monologues or soliloquies, I guess, from Othello. In Act 2, Scene 3, Iago says after we see his machinations and the way that he's turning Cassio to be one of his minions in this great scheme, and to win the passions of Desdemona, to steal her from Othello. Iago says to the audience, you know, this is where he's sharing his innermost thoughts with the audience. He says, "And what's he then that says I play the villain, when this advice is free I give and honest, probable to thinking, and indeed the course to win the more again? For 'tis most easy the inclining Desdemona to subdue in any honest suit. She's framed as fruitful as the free elements, and then for her to win the more, wert to renounce his baptism, all seals and symbols of redeemed sin. His soul is so enfettered to her love, that she may make, unmake, do what she list, even as her appetite shall play the god with his weak function. How am I then a villain, to counsel Cassio to this parallel course, directly to his good? Divinity of hell, when devils will their blackest sins put on, they do suggest at first with heavenly shows, as I do now, for whiles this honest fool plies Desdemona to repair his fortunes, and she for him pleads strongly to the more, I'll pour this pestilence into his ear, that she repeals him for her body's lust, and by how much she strives to do him good, she shall undo her credit with the more. So will I turn her virtue into pitch, and out of her own goodness make the net that shall enmesh them all." And so he's convincing himself that he's doing a goodness by saving Othello from the woman who he believes will have the power to destroy him. He's got this. He's deceiving himself so much, even though he also knows that his intentions are truly evil, and that his heart is set on destroying the people who have given him station in life.
And I have seen cases where the motivation behind the gamma was to get attention from the alpha. Often they want to be the alpha. There are times they want to get the attention of the alpha. They want to have his attention on them the way that he takes care of the bravos. But they're not willing to do the work of being a bravo, and they don't want to take instruction from the alpha. So they're trying to get themselves in the middle. And that's partly why they make that wedge in there, and why they will start to think that they know better and they got to protect the alpha. And I've seen this happen to me. Guys come on and love bomb you with, oh, I think your work is great, everything you're doing is amazing, blah blah blah, and they come on way too strong. And as soon as that happens, I know, give it a couple of months and I will say something he doesn't like or not reciprocate his level of attention the way that he wants, and suddenly he'll hate me, and then he'll want to take me down and destroy me.
Yeah.
And so I will try to throw some water. Yeah, I'll throw some water on it right off the bat if I can. Yeah. But it's fairly common. It's not always that they want to be the alpha. They sometimes want to be the neck that turns the alpha. They're looking to.
Or sometimes they want to be they want to have the feeling of being the hero who took down the alpha. They want to destroy the alpha, not because they can replace the alpha in any way, but they just want to feel like they're the one who knocked him off his high horse. And it's that level of pure vengeance as a motivator that makes them more dangerous than anything. Another great example is Masala from Lew Wallace's Ben-Hur. Another best friend, essentially an honorary brother who betrays his mate, for his own ends. And as the great literature, perhaps except in the case of Shakespeare, who loved a good tragedy, so much of the great literature shows the inevitable justice coming to these worm tongues. Their lies come back to defeat them. And probably the foundational example of the Gamma is found in our Holy Bible, in the character of Judas Iscariot. He's probably the most important Gamma in the story of man, because he's the Gamma who sold Christ for a bag of silver pieces and ended up immediately hanging himself from the shame of knowing that he had sold out the Son of God to his death. One of the more interesting examples, another take on the Gamma, is in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. Now, Raskolnikov is the hero, or rather the anti-hero of this book, and it's an excellent book, well worth reading for anyone who hasn't read it. Raskolnikov is a Gamma, by all measures, but we get to exist in his mind as he goes through the torment of having, committed a horrendous crime, and trying to use his intelligence, his education, his wit to cover it all up. But it's a tale of redemption, which is the good. There can be redemption for the Gammas, even the ones who go far off the rails, as Raskolnikov does, and it's through a return to Christian morals and to truth that we see Raskolnikov redeemed in this story. But that's a really great read and a really deep insight into the mind of a Gamma in a really interesting historical situation.
And it's important what you brought up about truth. Really, when you're reading Western literature and you see the interaction between the Alpha and the Gamma and the Bravos and the other members of the hierarchy, what you are seeing is the triumph of truth over lies.
Yes.
And it's being played out as people, but it really is it is a triumph of the concept of truth over the lies. And when you see for example, in Shakespeare, that the Gamma doesn't get his comeuppance, you see the negative effects of what happens when truth doesn't triumph. There's no guarantee truth will triumph. It will depend on basically it depends on the Alphas and the Bravos. Will they do the fighting? We don't usually send the Deltas off historically, although modern warfare does. We didn't send the Deltas off into the grind of war. That was our job, to protect them. In exchange, they put in the hard work. But it is important that the truth wins out, and that will depend on us. It's not magic that makes truth win. It's men supporting the truth that makes it win. Yep,
absolutely. And another final example from historical literature that I want to share is a great one from Nietzsche, and I'll read a chapter from his novel "Thus Spake Zarathustra." And this is a really good example here because it's the word Gamma is a new label for this particular group of men, but this behavioral pattern of men, as we've I think pretty well demonstrated already, has existed at least since the time of Christ in what we've evidenced, but certainly it's existed as long as man has. Men have always existed in hierarchies. As soon as we put the first tribe together and figured out how to order ourselves, there were some Gammas. And the other thing too to note is that, as you said before, the Gamma is rightly viewed as by everyone around him, because Gamma behavior is very, very normal for little boys. It's very normal for children to behave this way, but it's the responsibility of fathers to teach them and help them to grow out of this behavior and become responsible, truth-telling men. So it's the boys who don't grow up, who become the Gammas. But they've always existed, and there's been different terms to describe them. And Nietzsche referred to them as tarantulas, which is a really interesting analogy. And I'll read this this chapter here. It's, the chapter's only a couple of pages, so it's not going to take all night. Lo, this is the tarantula's den. Wouldst thou see the tarantula itself? Here hangeth its web. Touch this so that it may tremble. There cometh the tarantula willingly. Welcome, tarantula. Black on thy back is thy triangle and symbol, and I know also what is in thy soul. Revenge is in thy soul. Wherever thou bitest, there ariseth black scab. With revenge thy poison maketh the soul giddy. Thus do I speak unto you in parable, ye who make the soul giddy, ye preachers of equality. There's that word again. Tarantulas are ye unto me, and secretly revengeful ones. But I will soon bring your hiding places to the light. Therefore I do laugh in your face, my laughter of the height. Therefore I do tear at your web, that your rage may lure you out of your den of lies, and that your revenge may leap forth and from behind your word justice. Because for man,
or in modern day, it would be social justice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or in modern times, it'd be social justice.
Yeah, that's right. Because for man to be redeemed from revenge, that is for me the bridge to the highest hope and a rainbow long after storms. Otherwise, however, would the tarantulas have it. Let it be very justice for the world to become full of the storms of our vengeance. Thus do they talk to one another. These are those swarming hives of gammas we were talking about. Vengeance we will use, an insult against all who are not like us. Thus do the tarantula hearts pledge themselves. It's so spot on. And will to equality, that itself henceforth be the name of virtue, and against all that hath power we will raise an outcry. So again, tearing down, gammas gathering together to tear down the hierarchy for equality. Ye preachers of equality, the tyrant frenzy of impotence crieth thus in you for equality. Your most secret tyrant longings disguise themselves thus in virtue words. Virtue signaling, right? Fretted conceit and suppressed envy, perhaps your father's conceit and envy, in you break they forth as flame and frenzy of vengeance. And there's exactly what we've been talking about, the father's conceit and envy breaking forth in the next generation as a flame of frenzy and vengeance. What the Father hath hid cometh out in the Son, and oft have I found in the Son the Father's revealed secret. Inspired ones they resemble, highly intelligent guys. But it is not the heart that inspireth them, but vengeance. And when they become subtle and cold, it is not spirit, but envy that maketh them so. Their jealousy leadeth them also into thinkers' paths, and this is the sign of their jealousy. They always go too far, so that their fatigue hath at last to go to sleep on the snow. In all their lamentations soundeth vengeance, in all their eulogies is maleficence, and being judge seemeth to them bliss. I mean, how spot on is this? This is this is the gamma. Best description of the gamma I've ever read. But thus
it shows that it's not.
Sorry, go on.
It shows that this is a long-term historical problem, which means it's not going to go away anytime soon. So we need to keep vigilant.
Yes. Yep. But thus do I counsel you, my friends, distrust all in whom the impulse to punish is powerful. They are people of bad race and lineage. Out of their countenances peer the hangman and the sleuth-hound. Distrust all those who talk much of their justice. Verily in their souls not only honey is lacking. And when they call themselves the good and just, forget not that for them to be Pharisees, nothing is lacking but power. My friends, I will not be mixed up and confounded with others. There are those who preach my doctrine of life and are at the same time preachers of equality and tarantulas. That they speak in favour of life, though they sit in their den, these poison spiders, and withdraw from life, is because they would thereby do injury. To those would they thereby do injury who have power at present, for those with the preaching of death is still most at home. Were it otherwise, then would the tarantulas teach otherwise, and they themselves were formerly the best world maligners and heretic burners. We're almost there. I might as well read on to the end. With these preachers of equality will I not be mixed up and confounded, for thus speaketh justice unto me, men are not equal. the hierarchy is real. And neither shall they become so. What would be my love to the Superman if I spake otherwise? On 1,000 bridges and piers shall they throng to the future, and always shall there be more war and inequality among them. Thus doth my great love make me speak. Inventors of figures and phantoms shall they be in their hostilities, and with those figures and phantoms shall they yet fight with each other, the supreme fight. Good and evil, rich and poor, and high and low, and all names of values, weapons shall they be, and sounding signs that life must again and again surpass itself. Aloft will it build itself with columns and stairs, life itself into remote distances would it gaze, and out towards blissful beauties, therefore doth it require elevation. And because it requireth elevation, therefore doth it require steps, and variance of steps, and climbers. To rise striveth life, and in rising to surpass itself. And just behold, my friends, here where the tarantula's den is, riseth aloft an ancient temple's ruins. Just behold it with enlightened eyes. Verily, he who here towered aloft his thoughts in stone, knew as well as the wisest ones about the secret of life, that there is struggle and inequality even in beauty, and war for power and supremacy. That doth he here teach in the plainest parable. How divinely do vault and arch here contrast in the struggle, how high with light and shade they strive against each other, the divinely striving ones. Thus steadfast and beautiful, let us also be enemies, my friends. Divinely we will strive against one another. This is the healthy competition of the hierarchy. This is men competing and clashing against each other to create civilization, right? Alas, there hath the tarantula bit me myself, mine old enemy. Divinely steadfast and beautiful, it hath bit me on the finger. Punishment must be there, and justice, so thinketh it. Not gratuitously shall he here sing songs in honour of enmity. Yea, it hath revenged itself, and alas, now will it make my soul also dizzy with revenge. That I may not turn dizzy, however, bind me fast, my friends, to this pillar. Rather will I be a pillar saint than a whirl of vengeance. Verily, no cyclone or whirlwind is Zarathustra, and if he be a dancer, he is not at all a tarantula dancer. Thus spake Zarathustra. So that's a beautiful insight into the mind of the tarantula, now known as the Gamma.
Yeah, it's fantastic how I really like the part about the vengeance, and that is very it's a self-destructive vengeance, and we see that in the social justice warriors today. They will continually divide into ever smaller bands, attacking each other. Now we have there was the gay and lesbian groups against the straight people. Now even within their group, they split, and they have trans people on one side and gay people on the other side, and they're fighting each other over who is has the highest level of virtue and is the biggest victim.
And they all hate the buys more than anything.
They love to see who's better, but they hate the hierarchy. And this dichotomy, this is impossible to try to say, I am the bigger victim. I know I am the bigger victim. And they're creating a inverse hierarchy. So, hierarchy is a pyramid. They're trying to create an inverse hierarchy that goes down, points downward.
Yeah.
And it is really an unhappy, angry, vengeful spirit that you find in the Gammas.
That's right, and that's why we want to help Gammas if they can be helped, if they're here watching, if they're not spurging out and gathering their little swarm to come and troll us immediately and shut us down and make stupid comments like, Gamma's just a made-up word, it's not even real, don't listen to Vox Day, he's a con artist. Like, these kinds of undermine, instead of engaging with the conversation and the ideas, if they don't wish to stir up drama and they want to understand this, then they have a chance, of improving their behavior. It's a slim chance because, as you said, it's going to take a great deal of work. And the hardest first step is recognition of these traits in themselves and honesty, honest self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to admit this about yourself it will be a painful step to take, but hope and truth and joy lie on the other side of that step.
And one of the things I think the Gammas don't realize is how much the Alphas and Bravos want them to be honest and join the hierarchy in an honest way and stop the undermining. Because they tend to be vengeful. They think we're vengeful as well.
Yeah.
We're not.
That's right. No.
We want to help men that want to leave behind their gamma traits. I've coached a lot of men like that, help them to become more masculine, to find their place in a hierarchy. And we have a concern and a love for these men if they were to change who they are, to change their negative traits. Hey, help is available. Listening
absolutely.
to this is the first step. Listening to this conversation is the first step. The second step is admitting that, hey, this kind of describes me. Perhaps not 100%. Maybe you have some gamma traits. Partially describes you. Third step is going to go get help. Talk to James, talk to me. We can help you. Message us. Join our communities, and get the help you need. Men who come honestly seeking help don't get turned away from most male hierarchies, because it is hard to find honest men. Most male hierarchies will find a place for you.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, do get in touch with us if you've come this far and you're not totally triggered. Then apply to join championsofthelight.com. That's the new community that we're building, and it's so far a fantastic, great place. And if you're willing to come in and be honest about yourself, if you want help to get out of gammadom, we can help you. Get in touch with Noah on Twitter. It's at Noah Revoy. Get in touch with me on Twitter at James Fox Higgins. And yeah, we both coach, man. We can help. We can definitely help. So consider that. Now, the turning point really we've looked at the historical literature that almost uniformly, in my experience, portrays the gamma as the villain, and the liar, the Judas, the deceiver, the betrayer. But what we now see in modern times, in the age of post World War II Hollywood, is the gamma being made into the hero. So I know for me, as a kid growing up in the early 90s, all three Back to the Future movies were out. And I got to watch all of them, at a very young age. And I just thought Marty McFly was the coolest guy, because he was a rebel and he was a rock guitarist and he rode a skateboard and then he rode a hoverboard and he got the girl and he he saved the day and total hero. But if you go back, if you haven't watched Back to the Future in a while, go back and watch those movies and carefully examine the behavior of Marty McFly. He is so freaking dishonest with himself and with everyone. He just lies his way and just, relies on luck, essentially. Luck and lies are what get him through to his heroic status. He lies to his parents.
He relies on script writing.
Yeah.
He relies on script writing because there's no way you get that lucky in real life.
That's right. Deus Ex Machina, they call it. The god of was it Lawrence Kasdan who wrote those scripts? I'm not sure, but anyway, Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg at the helm, producing a gamma hero. And I don't necessarily think he was the first, but he was certainly happening as I mentioned earlier, at the same time as these alpha heroes like Van Damme, Schwarzenegger, Stallone. These gamma heroes were on the rise, and now today, it's clear as day. Now Aladdin in the 90s was another example of a gamma. He was obviously he was a pauper, so he was a little restricted by his economic situation, but he essentially uses an elaborate deception and another Deus Ex Machina of the genie to portray himself to be something he's not, literally to be the secret sultan, and win the heart of the princess. So again, it's through lies, deceit, and magic that the gamma becomes the hero of the tale. The character in the center there down the bottom is Wade Watts from Ready Player One, which was a thoroughly entertaining novel and a very fast-paced and well-produced Steven Spielberg film from a few years ago about a future where everyone lives in a virtual reality and this guy becomes the hero. But again, you look at his behavior, he's probably not as dishonest as the typical Gamma, but they really focused on him being the underdog, the misunderstood Secret King genius. And the key area for him is, and I actually think I forgot to list it before we kind of skipped over it, but it's a really standout characteristic of the Gamma, is they are subject matter experts. They are often obsessed with a particular hobby or pop culture or whatever it is, and they're able to drop these film quotes or say, actually, that video game was brought out and yada yada yada. Now, Ready Player One is a book written by an 80s pop culture video gaming Gamma about a young hero who's in a future where the 80s has become this glorified era of pop culture, and there's good reasons for that in the story, sure. But this guy, he becomes the hero. Literally, he literally saves the world because he has the best knowledge of 80s pop culture, video games, music videos, and those movies by that guy, like the Ferris Bueller. Somebody help me out, the name of that director. John Hughes? No, I don't know. Anyway, someone in the chats will let me know.
I think so, yeah.
Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller, that whole genre of 80s Gamma hero movies. So this guy literally is the hero because he has the best pop culture knowledge. And then on to his left we have Hiccup, who's the hero from the Dragon, How to Train Your Dragon series, and he again is this underdog, this physical weakling among the Vikings. He's socially awkward. He's not quite an outcast, but he's pretty much on the edge. But he's obsessed with inventing things and creating gadgets, and he uses that and his deep and subversive love that emerges for the dragons. And this is another, I'd love to do a whole episode of either my show or this on the way that they've turned the dragon, the archetypal enemy of man, into a friend of man. That's been a real turn in literature and pop culture over the last century. But he befriends the dragons and uses his Gamma traits to make himself become the hero. And he's not such a secret king because he actually is the hereditary heir to the throne.
However, if you notice, he doesn't look anything like his family. He doesn't sound like them. His mannerisms are different. Basically, they've taken a heroic Northern Western European family is what he's got. It's basically Vikings. And they've grafted on this guy who doesn't belong there with a stereotypical voice of a certain group of people. And they basically said, we're going to put you in there and now you're the hero.
Yeah.
And he really looks grafted on. He looks grafted onto that family. He doesn't look like he belongs there.
No, it's true. Maybe it's a Justin Trudeau type situation. Trudeau's obviously Castro's bastard child, so maybe it's exactly that. But what is redeeming about the Dragons series, and I only have interest in this because I have a son who's right at the age of loving these sorts of stories. And what I've found redeeming is that over the course of the three films, he gets older. The second film, he's a young man. The third film, he's a bearded man, and he really grows into his role as the alpha. So although he starts out as a Gamma, it's actually a good tale of the mobility that comes from him. Although there are some plot devices that I disagree with, and the whole dragons thing is ridiculous, but he grows in his ability to genuinely lead and be courageous and heroic in an honest way, not just in... They no longer rely on glamorizing his misfittedness from the tribe. He actually becomes a functioning member of the hierarchy and the leader of the hierarchy. And so, yeah, there's some hope there.
Yeah, I remember watching it the first time. I don't let my children watch anything that I haven't watched myself. So I was watching alone, and I'm like, if this guy doesn't, man up pretty soon, I don't think we'll be showing this to my kids. So you can see his evolution over the period of the film. And then I showed it to my son, and he said the same thing. A little bit goes on. He goes, "That guy's really annoying." He didn't like the character in the beginning part. He says he's too weak. My son says he's too weak. And I said, "Oh, don't worry. You're going to see him grow." And, okay. So I gave him the patience to wait until you see that happen in the story. But he has very, very low tolerance for watching anything where the men are either emasculated or are extremely feminized. It bothers him because I don't let him watch shows like that. And when we do watch programs where those people are the hero and they don't evolve, it is actually useful to see them evolve, because then you can see how you can tame your gamma tendencies.
Yeah.
But when they're the hero and there's never a penalty for it, it does have an effect on how we view the world. Propaganda, it comes in the form of movies as well. And there are, if you have movies made by gammas promoting gammas, and you think this isn't going to affect you or your children's view of behavior and what's acceptable behavior for men, then you're deluding yourself.
Yep. And I think one of the most directly subversive pieces of pro-gamma propaganda I have ever seen is quite a recent film. I think it was late last year it came out, or maybe even early this year, was Spies in Disguise, another kid's 3D animated film. And that's the guy on the... where's my finger pointing? The guy on the right here.
Closer to us.
Yeah. He... what's his name? This character's name? Walter Beckett is the name of this kid. Now, I won't say too much about it, but it's actually worth a look for understanding just how much the gammas understand the hierarchy, because this is a movie where you've got an alpha, maybe a sigma. He's sort of a James Bond emulated character, but he's really portrayed in the typical alpha fashion, played by Will Smith, voiced by Will Smith. And he is this super successful, world-saving spy action hero. And Walter Beckett is this weird misfit gamma kid who invents things, similar to Hiccup there. And by an accident, and really by Walter being really annoying, really persistent, and really ignorant of instructions from men higher up the hierarchy, he accidentally turns Will Smith's character into a pigeon. And then, he literally shrinks the alpha down to size, and then it's through the loyalty and the love and the inventiveness of the gamma that they are able to save the world together now that the alpha's been shrunk down to size. It's so freaking on the nose as far as the Secret King narrative goes. It just blew my mind when I watched it. It's like, it's almost self-aware, but it's still just reveling in the bullshit narrative at the same time. So it's worth a look just as a study in how heroes are now being presented to us in the modern age. And I guess I'll just fire off a couple of other examples that people might remember or want to check out. But Revenge of the Nerds is probably one of the more obvious ones from the 80s, which was just a pure gamma wish fulfillment fantasy film. That whole American Pie franchise of films, and all of the band camp associated films that came with it. That whole turn of the millennium naughty, sexy teen comedy lampoon kind of film genre. All of the guys in there were gammas. All of the heroes in there. Already mentioned Marty McFly. Every male character in Seinfeld, gamma. And George Costanza, possibly king of the gammas. Emperor of all gammas.
I even remember Seinfeld himself saying that every character in the show, every male character in the show was despicable.
Yeah.
He actually said that. That was where he derived a lot of the comedy from.
That was the whole comedy, yeah. And Larry David is a gamma, absolute gamma himself. So, he really just broke pieces of himself off into these characters. Will Hunting in the film Good Will Hunting. He's a more glamorous depiction of a gamma, but he's that super intelligent, extremely gifted and obsessed in one area, emotionally completely dysfunctional and in denial about a lot of things, but another facet of the gamma. And probably most recently, Finn in the Star Wars, the latest Star Wars trilogy. Finn is a gamma. He uses dishonesty from the get-go, and he's very cowardly, and again, just incredibly lucky. Luck just keeps falling on his lap to make him into a hero. And and then I guess there's plenty of real world examples, but we don't really need to get into pointing fingers. Once you recognize these signs, gammas are easy to figure out.
Yeah, and if you're having a difficult time dealing with a gamma, if you're a delta or a bravo, you're not supposed to have to be the one that deals with the gamma. That's supposed to be the alpha's job in your organization, in your hierarchy.
Yep.
You be intolerant of it, you don't encourage it, and it's the alpha that's supposed to clean their house. The alpha protects the group so that the group can accomplish its mission. And it is our job, though, if you're alpha, even if you're a sigmas don't necessarily have a hierarchy, but they usually have families and their own like micro hierarchy of them up at the top. And they have to protect them from these gammas from being in their vicinity. If you're doing anything where you're creating and you're out there making things happen, you're going to attract gammas. They are looking for places to cause trouble, hierarchies to topple, insecure leaders to undermine. And so knowing how to identify them is really important, because you will come across them if you do anything important in life. And you got to learn how to put them in their place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, the duel has gone out of favor. This was the main suppression technique for getting rid of gammas, was the duel. Okay, you want a gamma around? Let's go grab some pistols and shoot at each other.
Yeah.
And the duel never lost popularity amongst men, but the coalition between women who just, women are always prefer security, and people shooting at each other doesn't sound very secure. So women always prefer security, and them allied with the gammas who didn't like getting really called out when they would do something stupid. That enabled the banning of the duel. And as the duel was becoming suppressed across Western culture, we went from a very polite culture of masculinity we started right away to have a descent in the level of masculinity in our culture, and we started to end up with tolerating gammas because there wasn't anything we could do. You can't punch a gamma in the face nowadays without going to jail. And that was the number one way to suppress them. Nowadays we have to try to isolate them, keep them out of our groups. And social media, it's easy, we block them. But it is much
social
more difficult.
ostracism. Yep. Yeah, that's it. I think they should have just taken the duel back to being sword duels. Because that's a fairer test as well. Because even a gamma can learn to be a good shot. But it takes real sustained effort to become a good swordsman and to be able to physically overcome another man with the sword. And that almost certainly wouldn't be the gamma, I would suspect. But,
yeah, the British Navy had a great idea. They had a stick, I forget the name of it, a cudgel type of stick. And it was that they would allow people to duel with that long after the duel was outlawed on the mainland. Because on a ship, you have two choices. You throw the gamma overboard, or you beat the gamma out of him.
Yeah.
Because you can't have a breakdown of hierarchy on a ship during a storm. You'll all be dead.
Yeah. And it is better to beat it out of him, because then he has a chance of, he'll have to swallow his pride to continue to function. Or if he can't get over it, he'll throw himself overboard, and do everyone a favor. But if he can, then he will overcome. And he'll go, all right, I know my place. I've been put in my place. And, it sounds barbaric to women, this stuff, but it's essential. It's an essential part of men working together, especially when you think about men on a ship, or men pioneering around the world, or men out hunting mammoths. The world is violent. Nature is violent. And men need to understand their role of violence in the hierarchy against each other and in support of each other, in order to function as a unit. For a group of men to function as one violent unit against the violence of nature, everyone needs to know their place. And so, these are important ancient traditions that I'm certain will return when the feminarchy collapses. But we're not there yet. So right now we just have to continue to talk about these ideas, and certainly we don't condone or encourage any violence of any kind. Just honesty. Now,
and honesty and avoidance. Avoid them whenever you can.
Yeah, that's
Don't
right.
hire them. Don't hire them if you don't have a choice because you're not the one that makes hiring and firing decisions where you work. You know, be a father to the gamma. The gammas are the underfathered men. Be a father to him. Some gammas will come around for that. It's the best you can do often when you're unable to completely isolate them.
Yep. And those who can't, sometimes, the best thing for them is total ostracism if it happens to them enough. And enough of us understand this. This is why we're not obsessed with gammas and we don't really want to spend our time thinking about them or talking about them. But it's important that more men and women, but particularly men, understand this, share this knowledge, get it out there so that we can collectively, as Western men, develop our intolerance for the gamma. Because the only reason they have so much influence culturally and the only reason why they are so dangerous to our organizations is because we've become ignorant of these behavioral patterns or hyper tolerant under the feminarchy. So it's important as patriarchs to recognize these things, share the knowledge, and as groups of men, test out your fellow man and beat the gamma out of him, figuratively speaking, or get him the hell out of there if you can't. One comment from the viewers here, which is an interesting one, on the Ferris Bueller example. Nathan says, wasn't Cameron the gamma and Ferris trying to help him out? Now, I'd have to rewatch it because it's been a while, but I think actually that Cameron was an omega, or at least an omega waiting to happen. He was the depressive, isolated, no-hoper. And Ferris is charming, intelligent, highly deceitful, total bullshit con artist, and but he's glamorized to be, this is the thing about the way that the gammas are now being portrayed as heroes is all of their worst qualities are being elevated as their best qualities to make them into the heroes of these stories. But if you closely examine the behavior of Ferris Bueller or of Marty McFly, you'll see they're actually really disgusting guys. They're really reprehensible, weaselly little dudes who you would not trust around your woman. You would not trust them in your organization. You wouldn't want them about. Liars and cheats.
Yeah, what you're seeing in those movies...
But they're portrayed in a fun way.
Yeah, you're seeing them how a gamma wants to be seen or how he sees himself in his own mind. You have a gamma director directing a film about gammas. Obviously, it's not going to be negative. He's going to direct it about what he would like you to see or what he sees in himself. Yeah. And so we have to understand it's a bit of a fantasy.
Yeah, Hollywood is run by gammas. This is why, unfortunately, with the advent of the motion picture, when you look again at this thumbnail that we've used for tonight's show, the top row, these are characters from literature when it was the men who wrote the stories were actual Westerners and they recognized these patterns in male behavior. But Hollywood now, it's run and owned by a whole swarm of gammas. And so, everything they can do to glamorize and feminize the male, glamorize the gamma, feminize the hierarchy, demonize the alpha. It's all being done, and you'll see plenty of examples of it. This is how they're reprogramming us to be weak. This is how they've enabled the feminarchy to get into the position of power that it has, is through cultural subversion in this way. So we can't underestimate the the devastating effect of gammas run rampant, and we must stop them.
Yeah, that's our job as men. Thanks, James. This has been really wonderful. I think it's going to be very useful for people. Anyone who has any kind of responsibility needs to watch this and share this with other people who might share this with your friends with gamma tendencies. If you have feedback to leave in the comments, if you're a gamma, if you're looking for help, contact us. We'll help you.
Absolutely. Well, Noah, it's been a pleasure as always, and I shall see you next week for the next installment of Patriarch Hour.
Thank you, James. Looking forward to it.
All right. See you then. And thanks to everyone for watching at home. We'll see you next time. God bless. Thank you for watching this Rational Rise TV presentation. If you're not already a member, we ask you please come and join us and show your support at rationalrise.tv. This is our very own independent, self-managed video streaming platform where we cannot be controlled by the thought police. We're doing it our own way, and we'd love you to come and join us from as little as $5 per month. If you've enjoyed my show and you'd like to support me in other ways, a great way to do that is to grab a copy of my book, The Ghost of Emily, or its sequel, The Ghost of Delacroix. Both of them are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Booktopia, and all the rest. And not only available in paperback, but in gorgeous hardcover too, for the people who want to keep archive quality long-term books on their bookshelf like I do. So please grab a copy of one of my books. They're excellent, adventurous science fiction laced with philosophy, religion, family, men of the West, war, violence, guns, all the things that we like to talk about here on the James Fox Higgins Show. And of course, you can join us as well at our new social network, championsofthelight.com. This is a brand new platform. We're still getting started, but we would love for you to come and request to join. And gradually, we're going to be inviting people in to create an awesome community of like minds to share these ideas and to celebrate all of the beauty and the culture and the history of the European peoples, as well as to uplift and support the future of Western Christendom. Thanks again. I'm James Fox Higgins, and I'll see you next time.